Um, this is the December 5th meeting of the IDD Technical Advisory Committee, and want to welcome everyone again. And we received the minutes of October 6th. Is that correct? Would someone like to make a motion that we approve those, please?
I'll make the motion, Rick.
Thank you, Wayne. Looking for a second for approval.
I will second, Johnny.
Thanks, Johnny. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. And the motion carries. Is Pam Smith on the call?
I'm just admitting her from the waiting room. Give her just a
Okay.
second and she'll be available.
All right, we'll just wait a moment then.
Pam, can you hear us now? Okay. Sometimes it takes a minute to get.
Sure.
Pam, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, great. Welcome, Pam. We are now on item 4 of the agenda. And as recall from our last meeting, we were going to drill down a little bit more on people involuntarily terminated, and particularly kind of narrow that down to the last 6 months. So our first item is, Pam, do you know this number, the number of SEL participants who have been involuntarily terminated by their current provider for more than 6 months?
No, so Rick, unfortunately, I didn't get the agenda, and we are still working on that. We're working on two things because right now, if you'll recall, I said we're having to track this manually. We are working on a solution to put it in the system, so it'll help us be able to provide better data. So if we can postpone this to really 4, 5, and 6 to the next meeting, and then I will have that information. So we are looking into it, but it is a little bit, well, it's a lot of a manual effort, but we are collecting that for
Okay.
you.
Okay. So, but you have the questions now, correct?
I do, yes. I do have,
Obviously, yeah,
yes.
on this agenda.
Yes,
Okay.
I do. I have them. I have the agenda, and so I have the questions now, and then I will have that by the next meeting.
Thank you. So that would take care of 4, 5, and 6. Anticipated waiver amendments in 2024. Is there anything to report on that, Pam?
So I anticipate that we will do the permanent rate increases, although I don't have and I probably will not until the budget is passed, have a date for that. We right now have the amendments that are with CMS with a start date of 4/1 that incorporated the permanent Appendix K flexibilities. But I do believe that we will be able to do that, the rates. And then we're also going to do just some cleanup that we weren't able to do because of, the MOE and things like that. So definitions and kind of aligning things and taking out those services that are not that are listed in the waiver, but they're not provided because they weren't listed in the regulation. So that type of cleanup will happen when we put in the permanent rates.
Okay, so help me understand this. So we have a rate study, correct?
Yes, and it has been.
And when you say permanent rates, are you saying that those permanent rates would be taken from the rate study?
Yes.
Oh, and is that has the governor submitted his budget yet?
I do not know the answer to that. So I cannot answer
But
that.
you would, I guess you would then, we would have to believe that will be in his budget.
Right. There were, information has been provided and that, the rate study and what the outcome of that was has all been, provided and is being reviewed by people way higher than me. So, but unfortunately, that's really all the update I have. And so we'll, really when we see the budget and when that passes, is when I anticipate that we would make the changes to the waiver amendments.
Right, but the governor's budget should be submitted fairly soon, correct?
I cannot answer that question,
It would
unfortunately.
have to be, I suppose. Well, I think there's some deadline on it, but now we also are talking about uh, the waiver redesign, which is not necessarily the same thing as the rates, like combining some services that may be redundant. Where are we on that?
So we are reviewing that. We're also looking at potentially changing some codes. For example, it's very confusing when you pull reporting on code H004, which we use for behavior supports, but the actual description of that is alcohol and drug treatment. So when you see a child and that code is listed, it's very confusing. So we're looking at codes, we're looking at the services. We are looking at clarifying, the definitions where we've talked about, standardizing some of the definitions so that we don't have, 5 different definitions for respite or for case management. So we are looking at all of that as well as part of the amendments. And I think that
Would
John
you would
up too.
So would you say then we will end up with a product in which there's one rate for day training, there's one, and for all these services, there's the same number of units allowed per month between SEL and CLS, I mean, Michelle P and SEL. So it'd be hard to distinguish the two from each other.
I can't really answer that right now because it's really too early to say that. We are looking at rate parity, so that is part of the, if you'll recall, that was part of the rate study where services are very similar or
Yeah.
are, if the definition is exactly the same and across the different waivers, they're being rate parity. So that is it was part of the rate study. We are looking at still right now, we're looking at the limitations. And, if you recall in a lot of the frequently asked questions, we've talked about that right now, we've waived those limitations for several things. For example, Michelle P, the 40,000 and the 63,000, because with the rate increase, that would, unintentionally result in lower amounts of services. So we're going to be looking at all service limits. The goal is that the plans really are able to be person-centered and that meet the needs of the participants. So that's what the end goal is, and looking at those services to make sure that we are able to do that and to give participants the opportunity to have access to all of the services that help them remain in the community.
Would you anticipate that these changes that you're referencing, in the redesign, would those occur then after the General Assembly meets and you would come up with some proposals on that?
Honestly, I can't really answer. Part of it's going to depend on when CMS approves the waiver. There's task force recommendations that we'll have to look into. So I don't really have a good timeline right now of when, because there's so many pieces in motion right now to really, nail down a timeline of when we'll be able to start doing that. We will, though, communicate that, and we will, have some of those town halls where we talk about that when I have more information that I can share. I hesitate to speculate because I don't want to be wrong and give someone a false understanding of what anticipated dates are.
Yeah, I understand that too. And I guess my concern is probably many people that, okay, we'll pass a budget this year and then we'll look at some of this waiver redesign and realize it's going to take more action by the General Assembly, and then we have to wait another 2 years. You follow what I'm saying?
So we've been working very diligently on this, and so I feel like that we have provided the information that is needed to them, and the data that is needed to them. I would not anticipate that it would require that it would be another 2 years.
Oh, good, good, good. So okay, well that's good to know. On these waiver redesign notions, what kind of feedback are you getting from? I mean, is there going to be like study groups again formed on some of these? I know you've studied this quite a bit already, but will there be any more chances for provider input until you have these changes in mind?
We will have, yes, we will have sessions where we do, the town halls. Hopefully we'll be able to do those in the out in the community. We're getting ready, this week to do the town halls for the SMI state plan amendment, the 1915I. So I anticipate that we would do those sessions again, as well as that, we would have, there'll be the regular public comment available for both any regulation changes and any waiver amendment changes. And we've kept, a running, I guess catalog would be a way you could say it, of all feedback that we've received throughout all of this, and notes about things that that we weren't able to change right now because of the maintenance of effort with the ARPA funds, that we will be able to change in the future of things. So we've kept a full catalog of all of those comments. So but there will be sufficient time for input of both providers, all types of stakeholders, advocates, providers, participants, future participants.
Okay, and then, but if we were hoping that all this could be accomplished in 2024, that wouldn't be, that's not too big of a stretch of the imagination, that this can all get done next year.
So it may be in stages, Rick. It's not something I can really answer right now. I mean, we'll have to see, first we need to get, first step is we need to get the amendments with the services, that the Appendix K flexibilities that we're making permanent. We need to get that approved. So that's step one. So once that happens, then we'll see and develop a timeline. But that's the first step, is that we need those waiver amendments from CMS approved.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, I have heard that the rate study may not be implemented because if we did the full cost of the implementation, I've heard numbers like $1 billion.
I can't speak to anything on the rate study because it is in review by executive staff. So
yeah, well, I was just going to point out that this seems like if that's the thought, if it's $1 billion, that would really surprise me, because in fiscal year 2022, all the waivers combined was $1.085 billion. So for the implementation, at like nearly double the cost, I would find difficult to believe. So hopefully we're not, assuming that it would cost $1 billion to implement these rate changes.
What I will say is we are not assuming anything. We make the decisions based on objective data, but I also will caution you on what you hear, because we have not released official comment on that or official information on that.
So you haven't heard that, I guess.
I have not heard that, but we have not released any official comment on that. Okay. So
okay. The other members have questions on any of this?
I think Johnny had his hand up at one
Johnny,
point.
have your hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I was just gonna, and I know you limited in what you can say or have knowledge of, Pam. I was just gonna ask again about the rate study. I know it's completed and there are rate recommendations, and then the budget document usually just contains larger numbers and not necessarily um, reimbursement rates for particular services. Those are usually in the regulations. So any idea at all when the rate study recommendations may be made public?
I do not have an anticipated date. All I can say is that we will communicate it at a level to the services at the point in time that we're able to share information or that we have that information.
Well, we would anticipate that the governor's budget, when it comes out, will contain some provision for funding the rate increase, correct?
We will follow whatever the governor's budget. So whatever, it comes out, that information has been shared. So, and we will support the governor's budget and follow the governor's budget when it is approved.
Right. And I guess that's the rub. Will the governor's budget be approved, or will it be someone else's budget that gets approved? Okay, any other comments? Then we can go to waiting lists.
Okay, we have right now in Michelle P 8,774. SCL total is 3,370. 3,291 of those are on the future planning list and 79 are on the urgent list. We have 0 in waiting emergency slot or waiting for an emergency slot. And I will again, we're going to share some more detail in the House Bill 144 meeting this Friday, but I think I shared last time, remind you that just because they're on a wait list does not mean they are not getting services. A lot of the individuals that are on the SCL wait list are receiving services in Michelle P. Or in another waiver, similar with Michelle P. And many of them also have Medicaid eligibility and have access to state plan services.
Yes, thank you. I believe did Aaron send out the schedule for the meetings for 2004? I believe she did.
She did, yes.
And so everyone has those, and we're continuing with the second Tuesday of the month. Is that correct? Or the first Tuesday of the month? Is that right? Does anyone recall? I believe that's what it is. Anyway, so you have the list. So our next meeting will be in January. Let's see.
Rick, I pulled it up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like April 2nd would be the next one.
Oh, February 6th.
I'm sorry, February 6th, yes.
Okay, February 6th is our next meeting.
Yes.
And does everyone wish to continue meeting in Zoom for this next year? Does anyone care one way or the other? Hearing none, we'll make a decision on that then. If there's no other business, then our meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Pulling teeth.